So we're still waiting on Caple, but I think we can go ahead and get started. This is always one of the more insightful panels, is when you get the workforce folks together to talk about their experiences, and I think that this session will have value across the board for administrators, for the IT support staff in the schools, for teachers, for students. So I look forward to folks being able to use this quite a bit. We have a really, really good group. Kimball asked to each section repeat multiple times, and no, but they will be recorded. So they'll be available on YouTube after the fact. And there is a schedule if you go to reception, you can see the schedule of what's available right now. So I wanted to, well, for starters, I want to let you guys introduce yourselves, because you probably do a much better job than I could. And just so we can see the diversity of workforce opportunities in this field. The group here is a very diverse group as far as their backgrounds. Let's start with Keri. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a Chief Warrant Officer for Keri Fischer. I'm a cyber operations technician in the United States Army. I have a master's degree in data science. So I went to George Mason for a data analytics program that the Army provided as an opportunity to me. And I've been working at U.S. Army Cyber Command down here in Georgia for the last 9 months. I've been on and off with the unit here over the last decade. And so I'm happy to be part of the panel and hopefully provide some insight into what it might be like to be part of the IT community in the Department of Defense.
Excellent. Thanks, Keri. Brian, would you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, Brian. So my name is Brian Benn. I'm the CIO and SVP of the Atlanta Housing Authority. I did computer science and math and undergrad. Later on, got an MBA, but I'm definitely have a heart for bridging the digital divide, and I think that's so apropos now, especially what the pandemic has shown us, that big disparity. So I'm excited about this panel.
Oh, thanks for joining us. Tony, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. Tony DeGuire Parker. I am with IBM Corporate Social Responsibility as our Bridge to Employment lead. So I sit in a really interesting intersection between our community relations work and our human resources workforce development work. My background has all been in education, workforce development. Started my career as a classroom high school teacher, have a master's in higher education and policy studies. And now I am at the intersection of IT and bringing young professionals and new professionals into companies like IBM.
Excellent. You're a good person to know, Tony. Steve, you want to give us an introduction for you?
Yes, sir. Stephen Ferguson. I currently serve as the Chief Information Officer of the Technical College System of Georgia. A little bit of my background, started out not quite sure what I wanted to do as a biomedical engineering major, and went over into computer science and ultimately stuck with IT. Did finish up with a master's degree in IT from what previously was Southern Polytechnic. One fun fact is I think every college I attended merged with someone else, so that may have been a good omen, bad omen. But you know, Kennesaw, we're all owls now. But yes, so spent about 20 years in this industry. Have been a technologist and now that IT leader, really playing in multiple sandboxes. So I partner with all of our business units from technical education, adult education, workforce development, and economic development to help meet our students' needs and our industry needs across the state. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And last but not least, Caple Davis. Welcome. I don't know if you can hear us. Can we hear you? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background and your role.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my name is Caple Davis, and interesting. I went to Southern Polytech as well. When I was attending, it was just called Southern Tech at the time. And then after I graduated, they changed it to Southern Polytech. Now, obviously, Kennesaw State has merged or acquired it. but just kind of give you my background is my background is a software engineer. So I've got a bachelor's degree as a software engineer. I worked for a little while as a software engineer. But one of the things I did when I was in college, like my very last quarter, at the time our school was on a quarter system, not a semester system, is that I decided, okay, I know how to program these things, but I didn't really know how to build one, take one apart, that kind of thing. It's like I needed to know more what's going on the inside. So I made it a goal of mine. Okay, I'm going to build my first computer with the help of a friend of mine. I started build my first computer out of used parts. Go to these computer shows, buy old parts, because in college, especially at our last end, you don't have a whole lot of money to spend on on stuff. So anyway, once I got doing that, I started really building used computers and selling them because at the time computers were like super expensive. So you get a cheap used computer built, you sell it, make a profit, and so I started doing that as a business on the side as I kept my primary career at the time, building, as a software engineer. So I did that for a little while. I would say probably not long enough, but our company got bought out, and I didn't feel like migrating with the company to leave Atlanta at the time. They offered me a position, but I wanted to stay in Atlanta, so I just used that as an opportunity to start my own business. And I continued with basically fixing and repairing computers, and I ended up doing really a whole lot of that. From that to developing a curriculum teaching both young people as well as adults to how to get into the computer industry, teaching them to get certified in A+ certification. Did that for a couple of years for another company, then started my own school doing the same thing. And I kind of moved around as an IT consultant from mostly with small companies, just kind of helping them with their IT needs, anywhere from break fixing, printers, computer, antivirus, all the way up to network, running Ethernet network cables, designing, and just basically from top to bottom, implementing the whole network system for them. From there, my current position is now I'm actually full-time employed and at a local company in Atlanta. And what I do, my role is pretty much the IT director. So I'm basically responsible for the entire IT infrastructure. This company, I've got about seven, including myself, about seven of us on our team. And again, we handle anything from, break fix it for help desk type ticket to, hey, we're building a new building. We need to get data, get IT infrastructure in place. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Excellent. And that story kind of opens the door for our first question. And by the way, I have a series of questions, but if you have any questions for our panelists, please leave them in the chat, and we'll try to get to those as well. But my first question kind of goes along with that thought process. There are multiple paths into the IT field, and you've heard some of the folks talk a little bit about their experience and how they got here, and you see that it's not a straight line for anybody. It's not a straight shot. So I'd like you all to talk a little bit about the multiple avenues of getting into the IT field, specifically starting with Steve and Keri, but everybody else can chime in as well.
Sounds good. I'll kick it off here. The pathway is non-traditional. There's not this direct course of action where you kind of take courses and that lead to degrees that automatically guarantee you a spot in IT. Really, what we're seeing most of today is that people have this interest in IT and technology, and that becomes fostered at a very young age. And so that they explore that and learn skills that they then pursue and really turn into IT or computer science career. There's lots of programs for upskilling and reskilling and learn additional skills, but it's not this traditional, like a doctor or a lawyer type pathway. You may be interested in a lot of different things that coalesce into a really unique, job function. I'm sure that Keri can kind of talk about her pathway there. I would imagine it probably did not happen of I went to school for this one thing and then did that. And we're seeing that time and time again. We have people who are creative people, in all types of areas that have technology, and then figure out how to leverage technology to make their career or their businesses, thrive and do in exciting different ways. Fintech is a great example. Fintech started with people who are in this financial industry that had a technology bent that really went to, hey, let's put this online, let's digitize this and make this viable, for a larger market. So it's this non-traditional path that we're seeing. And really, I think the future of education is going to be this competency-based piece of teaching people, small components that build on each other, that either create some credential or create a degree and other things. I think the traditional degree structure is there and will remain there as this way of continuing to evolve and grow. But the entry point is.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. Keri, you got any?
Yeah, I always try to refer it back to some sort of passion about the particular field. So you have some sort of interest in technology and gaining understanding as new technologies come on board, and you're, as an individual, so interested in it that you want to learn about it no matter what, whether you're an engineer by trade. My path to where I'm at now started with me being in military intelligence and migrating my way over to a cyber operations officer. So the different things that are generating your interest, if you are superbly interested in it, or you, from our perspective, I always ask, do you eat, sleep, dream about code? Do you like to code? Do you like to do software development? What's your interest? That's the path that we've seen for, assessing the right talent within the IT field. So what does it really look like? It could be any type of background. It's really just, do you have the passion? Do you have the intuition to actually look at things more from a technology review? And can you go back and provide that better understanding as part of a team effort into the community that you're working in? That's what we've seen so far.
Nice, very nice.
To Brian, to that question, let me add a few things that kind of really affirms what both Keri and Stephen says. I just last week I met this gentleman. Right now he works for us. He does security. I'm talking about physical security, not cybersecurity. So I said, hey, I introduced myself to him because he was a new hire, so I hadn't met him. So I introduced him, say, I'm over the IT department. And then immediately he says, oh, I'm in school for working on a master's degree right now for cybersecurity and IT. So we got to talking. So I asked him what was his undergraduate was, and he says his undergraduate is in law enforcement. So I said, I said your criminal justice background, if you get into cybersecurity, might be helpful to you, especially if you get into cybersecurity, because there's a correlation between the two. And so I encouraged him to, continue on the path. And what I told him was, I said, hey, you're doing your master's degree in this field, but your prior history wasn't that. I said, you need to take a certification, like even as simple as a Security Plus, Network Plus, A Plus, just to kind of, because it'll help you, because, what he's dealing with a lot of policy. I said, okay, you need policies and people implement those policies, but you having some real hands-on really help you in that field. So I encouraged him in that field. But, the other thing I always tell people as well who wants to enter in this field, and it kind of really goes to what Keri said, is do you have a passion for it? When I interview people from my department, one question I always ask, and if the answer is no, or if they cannot describe this to me, it's very unlikely that I'll hire them. My question is, tell me about your home lab. If you don't have a computer lab at home tinkering around, that tells me you're not interested in IT. You don't really have a passion for it. Because if you really want to get in IT, you can always be tinkering with stuff at home. You're going to have your own little computer space and always breaking stuff at home, and the family's complaining, why did you stop working? Yeah, because you're tinkering. If you don't have that and not doing that, you're not interested in IT. And I'm not going to take a second look at you.
That's extremely interesting. And it segues into another one of our questions, and I'm going to jump down to that now. because you said quite a few things that lead into this, and that is what credentials are valued for entry-level positions. And I want to jump over to Tony with that one, but that was a good question right there. Tell me about your home lab. I've never heard that one. I'm sure that this gets into the hands of some HR folks. They may start to ask that question.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, I need to take this back to our HR team. So I appreciate that. So for us, again, the IT field being so broad and so diverse in what it is, something that I would put out to job seekers, folks that are helping job seekers, asking this credential question. And I think other folks on this team might have more specific credentials that they want to speak to. But from an employment HR standpoint, something that I really encourage folks who are exploring this world is to look at some companies that you might be interested in and what are their minimum qualifications and what trends are you seeing across those of certain certifications popping up on those that align to where you want to go, where your interests are, and see which one you should pursue. If you just even look at 3 to 5 companies, you will definitely start seeing some trends across those that will help you really identify the credentials that would be a good fit for you. And then something I can put in the chat for everybody, we have a really built out apprenticeship site that goes into different job tracks in the IT field at IBM that identifies different basic minimum qualifications, credentials that folks can explore. So I can share that as well for everybody.
Well, thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. Does anybody else want to chime in, Steve, on, or anybody else on what credentials are valuable and what experiences are valuable?
Certainly do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll chime in. I definitely good, Steve.
Let's hear from
go ahead,
Brian.
Brian. I'll wait.
Okay, so yeah, what I'll say is it definitely depends on the shop, because I mean, shop to shop and what their IT shop to IT shop and what their focus is. I mean, if it's a development strict shop, if shop that's focused on data, and the and with the IT spectrum being so broad, I mean, whether you're choosing Salesforce, whether you're choosing the cybersecurity track, whether you're choosing something on the Scrum Agile path, you have to understand and you have to determine. And that's important, but you also have to find your niche or where you want to fit in terms of IT. And then it depends on what that shop's focus is, what that IT leadership's focus is. Some IT leaders refuse to bring in anybody with cybersecurity training. They sometimes want to farm that out to a third, make or break an IT practitioner, and then there's always somebody to blame. So I think it's very broad, and I think it's important whether you're looking at full stack development, whether you're looking at DevOps, to determine what you want, and then there's some type of industry level certification for that specific practice or discipline.
Thanks, Brian. That was very insightful. Finding your niche. Steve, you want to chime in on credentials or training?
Yes, I want to make two quick points. One is I think as technology leaders and people in space, it's incumbent upon us to start challenging the norm for what credentials are required. What we're finding now with these non-traditional pathways is the array of credentials is really outdated. Getting people who have competencies and skills versus hard degrees, especially at entry level and learners. I think is really important in this industry because the technology is changing so rapidly. There's not going to be folks with 4 or 6 years of formal education on a 2-year-old technology, and so really getting people to adapt to these more skills-based approaches. So that's one. But for entry-level workers, particularly those who are hiring at the beginning of their career in the job, skills matter, but attitude matters more. Their sensitivity to risk, being willing to take more risk and accept challenges is certainly really important. But the attitude and the desire, the hunger, that passion for education is way more important than their hard skills at the beginning. We want to see they've made the effort, they're learning things, whether they come to us that are and ready to learn is really key to beginning the career.
Nice. Any other comments on that, or can we move on to the next question?
Yeah, I would just say this: the best, definitely. I think having a degree is nice, but it's not necessary. For me, from my perspective, having a certification, entry level for me is like an A+ certification. You need to at least have that. Of course, it depends on if you want to get into cybersecurity, then you need to have some kind, be looking in something on that track. But I think certification is more important than an actual college degree. Obviously, I'm not knocking college degree. I've got one. I'll encourage anyone who wants to have one. But I'd say competency is really the key. And what the certification program does is kind of help you test your competency, at least on a minimum, an entry level basis, I would say for sure. And of course, your ability, Steve talked about, what's your attitude like? Okay, do you have an attitude, hey, I'm willing to learn, I want to learn, I'm excited about this? Because as all of us in this panel know, what's hot today is a whole nother thing tomorrow. So you've got to always be willing to learn. And some of it is going to be, hey, can I teach myself? YouTube got a lot of great stuff out there, but are you willing to learn? Or hey, I just want to land a job and then settle in there. That's not going to work. Technology is always changing. So you're going to have to keep up. If you're not willing to do that, you're not going to survive in this industry.
From our perspective, I think it really gets down to you as an individual. The two smartest people I know in our cyberspace operations don't have a bachelor's degree at all, because that's not how they learn in a classic curriculum type of environment. But the on-the-job training and the skill sets they've acquired through the courses that were offered to them, whether they're from the Army, from Cyber Command, whatever it might be offered through, being able to do that, proactively solve those problems, that was always something bag. And so from our perspective, there's various avenues, whether it's trying to make sure you're marketable long-term in the public sector after you finish your service, or you're just trying to gain your skill sets, which the Department of Defense tries to help provide as well. So there's random ways to get to finding that talent, the skill set, what you might need. I always review, look internally to yourself to see if that's the right path for you, and then get the skills that you really are interested in, that you want to maintain and help solve those harder problems, because that's what makes you marketable, whether it is in public sector or it's in the Department of Defense, wherever it might be. Your passion, how you bring your talent to the table, and how you acquire your education, whether or training, that's a big piece of it, because doing something as a forcing function or a certification function, those are all good things, but you want to see them actually bring that to the workforce and actually perform those functions as well. So book learning versus on the job. We have quite a bit of personnel in our force across the 22,000 personnel that really did learn while they were at the job. They've been in the Army 20 plus years, and what we're looking at now is something they had to learn along the way. There wasn't a curriculum or education program for them. Probably similar to who you have on a panel here today.
Excellent. I'm going to shift just a little bit because you guys have kind of leaned on this here and there, especially in your intros. But I want you to share with us a little bit about, one, the different contexts that you can work in with the skill set, and what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? Like, what are you doing with your day? I know something Caple said is something that I can definitely relate to. That I went to school and learned a lot about programming, but when I found out about the hardware aspect of it and the hardware side and the plugging in of the computers and making the computers talk to each other across whichever device I have in between them, whether it's a switch or a router or whatever, like that fascinated me and it got me out of my seat. So what do you guys do on a day-to-day basis? And where can IT take you in our society? And anybody can jump in with that one.
I can speak to that. Just kind of give you an idea, just from my perspective. When I started working here, I was the only IT person in my current position. I was the only person. So now there's 7 of us. So imagine from day one, anywhere from, hey, someone just ordered, buying a new computer, unboxing it, set it up, connect printers, drivers, all that. So you go from that entry level or grunt work, all the way up to, running Ethernet cable, or if you don't have time, having, hiring contractors, subcontractors come in, run or fiber optics cable, testing it, buying network switches, getting out box, configuring, setting up, that kind of thing. So it runs a gamut. Now that there's more of us, I have more time to do other things. So in my current role, I still do some of the hands-on stuff, but I don't spend as much time doing the hands-on just because I have other people to do it, and I have to be involved in other things. So I'm always thinking ahead, okay, hey, what's the next project at hand, prepping for that, talking to vendors, negotiating with vendors, and even contractors, what they're going to come do work for us, So I'm dealing with a lot, but I still like to get my hands dirty sometimes and actually go hands-on and doing certain things. But a day can. I'll give you one example of a day I had. Actually, 2 days I had. Oh, and this relates to IT. If you work in the IT field as well, don't think of it as a 9-to-5 job, because you got to think about it from this perspective. If you have to upgrade a server, depending on the role of it, might not be able to do it during regular business hours because people are using it. So you're going to have to be willing to work outside of normal hours, maybe on the weekend or 2 o'clock at night, to give you time to do the update and make sure things tested before you can put it back in production. Or if there's a problem, have time to roll things back to where it was. So you have to be flexible in that time. It's not like, going, hey, I'm going in at 8, getting off at 5. It doesn't necessarily work like that. So in some cases you can do that, but you have to be open to the idea of being able to work outside of hours. I had a couple of bad days at work one day. It was actually literally a campus, and I got a call starting, and the calls you hate is the calls when you get from the CEO or the president. Those calls you do not want. But it was such a day where, hey, the entire campus was down, and you don't know why. And so you had to start somewhere. Those days can be really hectic. And it ended up, the problem was someone in a whole nother part of the building decided to change an IP address. So it ended up being a networking issue. But the problem is that they changed, this is where just enough to be dangerous. He happened to change the IP address for a default gateway and assign that to a bunch of computers in his building. And so no one could get to the internet. So I literally had to go unplug every building. I mean, not the individual computers, but every network link that goes to every building to say, hey, where's the problem? You start with the main building. Once that came back online, then I'll bring the other building online. And I was able to get it, but finally, when I plugged that particular building back in, 5 minutes later, the entire network went down. So I was okay, so at least help me narrow, okay, the problem is over in that building. So I was able to get everybody up until we finally figured out, and I had to go talk to people, hey, has anyone in this building changed anything? And sure enough, someone decided to change an IP address to a default gateway, and that just took the whole thing down. And it was a simpler network than in my current environment. If we were to do that, it wouldn't have taken it down because it's segmented completely different. It would have taken them down, but not the whole property. But the days can go anywhere from, hey, I can't get on this website, because we have maybe certain protocols in place where it blocks certain website. And yes, the other things, like you can't treat everybody the same way. There's certain in certain departments or certain members in certain departments need access to content where you wouldn't allow other people to go to those websites because of the role of their job. A simple example would be you may want to block social media or some aspect of social media for certain employees, but you have a social media department. They obviously need full access to social media. So these are nuances that you have to be willing to kind of configure. And those, you have people that kind of specialize in firewall configuration and that kind of thing. But a typical day, it varies. I mean, like I said, it goes anywhere from setting up a computer to installing the virus software and that kind of thing, and to the whole gamut of, okay, bringing a new building online. Because right now, you may have construction going on, so you have to kind of plan ahead of time to say, hey, get your fiber contractors in place and have them, and have them do their work, and then you haven't even time to go inspect it, make sure they've done everything that they're supposed to do, put things where needed to be, So it's a lot, and of course it depends on company. It depends on the company or the environment. In my case, sometimes we're in production where we're shooting movies and television stuff, and most times I'm not on set with the producers and directors unless there's a problem. Then I get a call, say, hey, we're having problems here. And one of the problems in our industry, in my industry anyway, is that you've got Wi-Fi is a big deal now. Everyone is doing Wi-Fi, but that creates a problem for us when you have companies coming in shooting video, but their camera themselves and equipment have Wi-Fi. They want to talk internally. Then you have too much radio frequency in the environment interfering with the on-prem Wi-Fi, and so there's a lot of ups and downs with that, and that's still a headache we're trying to work out sometimes. But yeah, it's never a dull moment. Let's just say, never a dull moment.
So we got the movie industry. Brian, you want to tell us a little about what a day looks like for you?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, right now, I guess in my role, I'm definitely trying to do a lot of strategizing, and just trying to make sure that our technology strategy is kind of anchored by the overarching strategy of the organization. And so I've got my directors thinking in that vein. We want to be proactive. We don't want to be a cost center. So we want to make sure we're increasing the productivity, and I would say profitability, except that I'm in a nonprofit organization, but it's the same mindset. And then from a tactical level, we're doing things such as digital transformation, just trying to make sure there's a symbiotic relationship between people, processes, and technology. So we just want to make sure we have our arms around the data. We want to make sure that we're reducing disparate sources so we can set the company up for data-driven decisions. We're trying to look at things and incorporate things that we can, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's Internet of Things, predictive analytics. So a big focus now is data. And then we're also E3 going to E5 level Microsoft Shop. So we're trying to leverage a lot of the offerings that they have from Microsoft Dynamics, Flow, and those kind of things. So we're just trying to stay productive and increase the product, make sure it's all anchored by a strategy so we know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and it's supportive of the organization as a whole.
Excellent. So the high level strategizing is also part of this role. So what we've heard already is that you can go from doing a lot of the grunt work where you're setting up a computer or running some wires, all the way to managing the strategy of the entire company, and figuring out how all of the new technologies that are coming out can benefit your company and whether it's worth your time to engage in those. So it's a lot of stuff going on. Keri, what does your day look like?
My day is really focused on how do you solve problems at the speed of cyber. I use that for a little bit of a laugh as well, because things that happen within our domain or within our day-to-day workflows are very quick. It could be a little problem, it could be a big problem, it could be related to data, it could be related to new technologies that need to be evaluated for end users like me, but on teams that are at this tactical level dealing with the spectrum, just like Caple was talking about, right? Just in a different atmosphere. So for us, it's there are some random questions. We need to find and identify the problem. We look at ways to solve the problem, whether it's through what I'm a part of, which is running our big data platform and doing the analytics models, things like that, or if it's the review of technology where public sector comes up with ways to solve these hard problems. How can we evaluate that and make sure that if it is a valuable solution, how can we get it fielded to the rest of the Army workforce, if that's the case, right? So for us, it's day-to-day problem solving, but we try to provide as much technical advice as possible so that our senior leaders can actually use our taxpayer resources best as possible for that return on investment from our perspective. So day-to-day problem solving. Problem
solving is the word. There's a question in the chat that I think probably is for you, Keri, but also is fitting for Tony and Steve as well. Autumn asks, other than the Cyber Patriots Club, Can you explain how they can recruit students interested in military careers to focus on CS? And won't that score high on their entrance exam, the ASVAB? So Keri, I don't know if you want to.
Sure. So we have multiple avenues of trying to make programs available for service. So it could be related to the military. It could also be for federal service. And so while there are direct commissioning programs out there now that can assess your skill set, doesn't matter whatever age you are, whatever skills you're bringing to the table, they'll try to do a commission for you anywhere from lieutenant to possibly lieutenant colonel or colonel. It just depends on what kind of skills you're bringing to the table. We have offerings where you can actually go and sign up for a particular skill, so a particular MOS that can give you the skill set and training as you get qualified to help with that. Additionally, for the federal service perspective, USA Jobs hosts the events that have resumes that go out. It's a little difficult, I think, to get them without some sort of security clearance review, because that's usually a big piece of it. But knowing that you have multiple avenues to go forth, whether it is to take an ASVAB and score high or get your GT scores pretty high, but that's just one component of it. If you choose the military side, where it comes into being a soldier first and a cyber professional second, it's going to include all the rest of the pieces to it, where you're going to wear your uniform, you're going to be physically fit, you're going to make sure you're meeting all the Army values that are really needed. Similar values are really part of the Department of Army Federal Service program. So we have intelligence specialists, operations specialists that work on behalf of that's my husband. He's a Department of the Army civilian, and he works in Army Cyber Command and does his job not in military uniform anymore, but he has a call to do it. So as far as the recruitment, especially locally here in Augusta, Georgia, we have a wide range of opportunities for IT workforce and the cyber workforce. And if you choose to do the enlisted route, or you want to try to do the direct commissioning officer route, or doing programs through ROTC, there's all kinds of avenues. If you have the right talent, we're looking for it to bring into our force to help us win this battle within the cyberspace domain.
Well, thank you very much. I hear that ROTC is really ramping up their cyber recruitment efforts as well. Anybody else want to chime in on recruitment? How can we get students interested and involved in this space?
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. Again, I don't have the background in military that Keri does, but I think just from a basic standpoint in the IT field, I really believe in, like, the students need to see it to be it. So working with your local branch offices, I mean, we're also in a very digital world now, accessing resources online to show students what careers are possible in the military so that they can intersect military and IT if that's their field. From my lens of experience, so many times students don't realize that IT is in hospitals, IT is in the military, IT is in airline companies, it's in hospitality. And so just really exposing students to the breadth of where these careers can exist in all the different industries, I think can make a really big difference when students are trying to make those career choices.
Excellent. So we had one other question. Steve Childers was talking about the program at their local university, Columbus State University. They said they have a one-year program that provides training, an internship, and multiple industry-level certifications. Is that a kind of program that you think would be valuable? What do you think about this kind of program? Their certifications are in different areas of information security.
Yeah, I'll start on that one. I think those are opportunities, especially that internship, apprenticeships that are available. I also say that that's a way to get folks that are interested in military careers and others, is that apprenticeship model where they start getting experience early on. There's ROTC programs and things like that were mentioned, but that's almost like the apprenticeship, type model in other areas. But anything that starts joining hands-on, on-job learning together with classroom-based learning is an incredible opportunity. TCSG has a lot of these apprenticeship models where students, the curriculum is really driven by the employers, and the students are spending equivalent amounts of time in a classroom and labs and lecture as they are on the ground with that industry. And I do those are going to be very strong in the future. I'd also say that any of these internship or other programs programs, have the possibility of kind of being credentialed and providing these stackable credentials. So we do create more lifelong learners. Again, I go back to that 4-year degree or otherwise. There is value in that. There's value in the master's degrees. I think a lot of us on this call have those. There's value, but as a starting point, the 2-year and less, I think, has a lot more value to get people ready, so they can be more intentional long term in how they chart their educational journey, and learn. And so that programs like that I see as something that's a stackable credential, right? It's a 1-year or less program, gets them experience. They come back, they earn something for that. Now they build upon it and use those building blocks to create this really non-traditional path to their career. And it sounds like the U.S. Army has a lot of opportunity already for things like that in training opportunities and the ability to move between different functional units, because you may start in one area and go, hey, I'm really interested in this. And I think that's where a lot of technologists come in. I'm really interested in the technology aspect of this. Let me go explore that further. And as employers, if we can find ways to let our employees do that, it's going to create a lot of loyalty, as well as a lot better of equipped workforce. So.
Great. So we're
so from my perspective, I put it into the chat. The Department of Defense has a SMART scholarship program, and at least from my perspective, we sponsored at least 2 interns that have come for their summer cycle with us. But they basically get their tuition, room, and board paid for as they go through this program, and then the ask is really from the federal service perspective, not that you have to put a uniform on, but that you come in, provide some perspective back from the IT field. So we had a lot of data scientists, AI personnel trying to go after this program. And then, they go to school just like any other normal educational field. And then they come back and help us solve the hard problems, just like I said, every day.
Excellent. So we got a few minutes left. I don't know if anybody wanted to give some final comments and thoughts. I hear a lot about apprenticeships. I'm a huge champion of those. There's specifically for the folks on the panel, this next session is about pathway resources, and one of them is GTRI, Georgia Tech Research Institute, and they have a series where they engage professionals to beam into the classroom and interact with the students. So if you guys are interested in jumping into the classroom via Zoom or something like that and interacting with students, hook up with Tyler and Lee. But any lasting comments or thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. One, back to the question that was asked about the value of these programs. I think those are absolutely excellent. And you think about someone, let's say take someone from high school, for example, take something like that. Let's say a 1-year program, they've got some reward for it. They start working and maybe work for a year, maybe 2, whatever. They're more mature when if they want to go pursue a degree program. At that point, they're more mature and they probably have a better sense of what they want out of the degree program rather than just going to college just to be going. So I think this is really, I like those programs. I think it's really helpful. Something that Keri said earlier on when she was commenting on what's a day-to-day basis, I think it's absolutely fundamentally what IT comes down to is solving problems. And that could be either something that's something new that has developed, not that something's broken, but say, hey, we're doing this, but we're trying to find a more efficient way of doing it. Can IT come up with a solution, whether it's an AI related or not, but to solve this problem, make it more efficient? Or something is broken, we've got to go fix it. Both of those are solving different kinds of problems, but it's at the end of the day, it's solving problems. And there's really a lot that can be done with respect to you can really be a specialist in IT because there's a lot. I mean, cybersecurity is an area that you can spend your whole life just doing that and nothing else. Developing software is a whole other area. You can spend your life doing that, So I think that's great. One thing I'd like to say in general, and what I tell my guys, I said, you have to, two things really. One, you have to think of yourself as really kind of a doctor in one sense. And I got that because I've got one guy on my team right now that in his younger days, he wanted to be a doctor, like a surgeon. Now he's in IT. And I said, okay, you are a doctor, but it's just a different kind of doctor. And I said, you have to treat your job the exact same way. And I said, think about if you're doing a heart surgery on a patient, you can't afford to screw that up. That's a life or death situation. I said, granted, IT is in some respects not life or death, but you got to think about, okay, I'm going to change this command and press enter. What effect is that going to have? Okay, that enter key could mean millions or billions of dollars, depending on when you press enter, what happens. So you have to be careful of, the guy that's taking the computer out of the box and putting it up on the desk, that's not as critical, but depending on where you are in the hierarchy of things, you pressing enter can make or break a whole lot of things. And those whole lot of things could involve a literal hospital that someone's doing surgery, and you take a whole system down. That could be a life or death situation. So you really have to think about the military context as well. I mean, and think about, cyber crimes, think about, ransomware, there's a lot could be at stake. So it could be a really high stake game depending on what level you are in this field. So you can really gotta be able to focus and concentrate on, hey, what am I doing? And, so that's kind of what I want to say. But you could do a lot in this field in terms of career-wise.
Appreciate it. All right. Any other last comments? I think we're.
Sure, I do. So I like to always use, most of the things that Caple said from our perspective is there's people like that all over the world that are intentionally or unintentionally doing that. And so for us, we look at it as, how can I make my network more defendable against things like that? How can I protect the United States government moreover from that, right? So while we have varying ranges of how we want to use our skill sets, right? It could be also the same types of applications that we're talking about, but we could be looking at it to actively defend the United States versus actively trying to exploit those people that might actually be doing harm to us. So for us, what we like to highlight is whatever your passion draws you toward, even if it's for the federal service, for Department of Defense, an enlistment career, whatever it might be. I didn't start out thinking I would do a full career within the Army. I was going to be a one contract enlistment and done and go off and do great things. I feel like I'm still doing great things and I have things to give back, but knowing that there's multiple paths that I think are presented within this workforce panel, and that the skills can be acquired multiple different ways. And I think that flexibility really it's on the individual that can help to shape what they want to do and be successful within their life. So, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. And thank you all to all the panelists. You guys have been great. Again, I was excited about this panel. You have a great group. People.
Yeah, I've got a quick question. It's actually directed at Keri. Maybe she can confirm or deny this for me. But I don't remember who, but it was last year sometime. I don't remember who actually said it. But I was talking to some military personnel, and they said one approach that the Army or the military as a whole is taking right now is think of every soldier to think of themselves as not just a soldier carrying weapons or shooting missiles, but you think of yourself also as a cyber war, because we're in information war at this point, and yeah, you've got to be able to fly the B-2 bombers and the the drones and everything else, but at the end of the day, you also have this other attack that's going on, that battle constantly, which is in the information world, information war. So the idea is to get every soldier don't just think of the physical aspect of the weaponry, but think of when they're a keyboard as well, because they could be infiltrated if they're not thinking about, hey, should I click on this link or not? Because that could make a difference. So what they were saying is that the military is trying to get every military person to think of themselves not just as a regular soldier, but as also a cyber soldier warrior. Is that is that true, or how true is that?
So that is true. Classically, what the military has always said is that every soldier is a sensor, and that would just be like with your eyes, whatever you're doing, you can see it, you can report it, whatever it might be. But every soldier, every person that's actually serving has all of these devices available to them, has dependencies on the cyberspace domain that intertwines with every domain that we have for air, land, naval, and space, right? So as these intertwine, we're all interconnected. And I have a T-shirt that says, "Don't click the link," right? Because you could send 1,000 emails and you only need one person to actually click that link to make us vulnerable. And so our push forward is really an education perspective of, be cognizant of your surroundings, understand that, not email from a random Gmail account is going to be true, that you need to click that link, right? Protect yourself. We'll do our best to protect everybody else within the Department of Defense, but we have to have each person a valued member to push that defensive posture, because it really does only take one click of that link, and there you go.
Agreed.
Yeah, that definitely reflects our CS4All goal, because everybody has to have this skill set in some shape, fashion, or form. And some people can make a career out of it, which you all have done. Thank you, everybody. Brian, Keri, Tony, Steve, Caple. I appreciate you all for showing up and sharing with us. We have a few minutes before our next session, but you guys have a great afternoon. We're indebted to you.
Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate it. Thank you so
everybody.
much. All right. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody.
Brian, good to meet everybody.
Same here.
Likewise.
You too.
Nice to meet you as well.
Hey, Keri. I've got a kid actually. He's actually in the military. Right. He's actually in college, Georgia. I can't remember the college. It's a college in Georgia. It's a military college, but he's actually specializing in cybersecurity. He reached out to me recently asking if he could get an internship with my company in that area, and I told him, yeah, I'll definitely work on that. But I'm wondering if it's okay at some point, maybe when he's finished with me, maybe put him in touch with you or something. Maybe you can help him, guide him in some direction from a military perspective.
Be great. We have a couple points of contact that help with the different programs, whether he wants to continue for the education piece or he'd like to see the opportunities for the variations that we have right now for enlisted, officer commissioning. And then we also are starting to offer an opportunity to become a developer from scratch, right? So you become a technician like myself as a warrant officer level 1. Straight from wherever you're graduating from. So depending on how he'd like to go about utilizing his skills, I think happy to help support providing as much information as possible, because that's the best way. If he's really willing and talented and wants to do things like that, happy to have those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. So Brian, can we share our contacts?
I'll do it in the introduction.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good to be.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one, everybody.